Wow, what a morning. I am deeply inspired and moved by all the speakers. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Kelly, and others. I'm going to build on what's been discussed here this morning, and I'm going to present what at first glance seems like a somewhat radical idea, that business actually can be part of the healing of our world. So let's explore that thought. And by the way, if you want to share any of this, you might want to do that, using Twitter and so forth, some of these hashtags. I'm reminded of the quote from Charles Dickens on The Tale of Two Cities. And we're living in a time which is perhaps even more representative of those ideas than ever before, that it is indeed the best of times today. There's never been a better time on this planet to be born a human being in terms of your prospects for a long life, for a healthy life, for getting education, for having access to all these technologies, for connection, for meaning, for purpose. But it is also the worst of times. We have never faced an existential threat to our very presence on this planet the way we do today. So it is the age of wisdom, it is the age of foolishness. It's the season of light and the season of darkness. It's the spring of hope, the winter of despair. We have everything before us and we have nothing before us. We're all going direct to heaven. We're all going direct the other way. I truly believe that the direction we take from this point will depend a great deal on what happens in the world of business. Because business has a disproportionate impact on our lives. And unless we change the way we think about business, we are actually going to go down that dark road. But if we do change it, then we're going to rise to heights that we have never even dreamed of through business. So life is beautiful and life is filled with joy. We can all think of those moments in our life. But we also know that life is tragic and filled with suffering. 15,000 children will die today under the age of 5 from preventable causes, right? There's tremendous, tremendous suffering that still exists in the world. And as Steven Pinker has documented, physical violence is down dramatically. Many, many fewer people are being impacted by wars and murderers and terrorists than ever before. 1995, 99% less than historic norms. But at the same time, our psychic suffering is way up. Anxiety, depression, suicides are up 25% in this country in the last 18 years. They're going down in the rest of the world, but they're increasing here. Depression, anxiety, all of those things are on the rise. Psychic suffering is increasing. And of course, planetary suffering is at an all-time high. Just think about what's happened in the last 100 years. We've created a lot of prosperity for billions of people, but at the same time, what has happened to our planet and the life on it? 80% of natural forests are gone, 30% of the arable land is no longer usable, large mammals are down about 90% in the last century, large fish are down 95% in the last century. Half of all species that are with us today, we're living through the 5th mass extinction in the history of this planet, and the first one that is caused by human activity, largely. And the toxic burden on our bodies is growing. The President's Commission on Cancer reported during the Reagan administration that about 24% of Americans could expect to get cancer in their lifetime. During the Obama administration, the same commission reported about 44% of us are expected to get cancer. Right? So there's something happening with all the toxicity that we've been living with in our food and our water and the air, etc. Pollution is the biggest killer in the world. 9 million people die every year. That's 15 times more than all these other things put together. And most of that is the result of the way in which we choose to do business. It was kind of brought home to me in a very personal way when my brother showed me a picture from Google Earth of the area surrounding my mother's village in India. And you see that big, beautiful green river flowing in there. And then there's a textile plant that got put in a few decades ago. And you can see what happens to that river downstream. It becomes a black trickle. That water cannot be used for anything. All the life surrounding it, and there's no life in the water, and there's no life surrounding it, right? This is what we have allowed business to do. And we can't do that anymore. So there's a lot of suffering in the world. And as the Dalai Lama has said, our prime purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. I believe we are hurting each other. And we don't need to be doing that, certainly not in the world of business. And we don't do that consciously. But if you don't actually choose to be part of the healing, we are probably part of the hurting. Because we take all these actions and don't realize the consequences of those actions. Because the human costs of doing business are extremely high, and we don't measure them anywhere. What is happening to the health and well-being, not only of the people who work for us, what's happening to their children and their children's children and their communities, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual dimensions. There's a huge, huge cost. And some of it is very tangible. One of the saddest statistics is that heart attacks are 20% higher on Monday morning. Think about that. Our work is literally killing us. There's a recent book that came out last year that estimated about 120,000 incremental deaths a year in the US are due to the way we work. It's not the work itself, it's the way we lead, manage, and organize, and all of the stress that that causes. Right? And that's just employees. There are many, many other impacts of the way in which we organize, lead, and manage our businesses. We've heard a little bit from Bob and others about the financial stress that people are under. Think about this. In the richest country in the world, at a time of record stock market highs and full employment, 50% of Americans actually have less than $400 in the bank. And if they needed $2,000 for even a minor emergency, their heating system, their car, their child gets sick, they would not be able to come up with it within 30 days, tapping into friends, family, and their place of employment. Extraordinary amounts of financial stress out there, which then leads to all kinds of other stress. So traditional American-style capitalism is no longer working for most Americans. We have to rethink. So we have this whole conscious capitalism movement, which is around the idea that business needs to be done with a higher purpose beyond profit, that it needs to actually take care of the well-being of all stakeholders, not just focus on shareholders or investors. And the sad irony is that even our healing professions, such as doctors, nurses, veterinarians, have become places of suffering because of the way we run our organizations. Again, depression, drug addiction, and suicide much higher in many of these professions. So there's something fundamentally wrong. The way we work isn't working. But the fact is that if you do it right, business can actually alleviate suffering and elevate joy. It doesn't have to be that in order to make money and run a successful business, we have to cause suffering. In fact, quite the contrary. So this is not about healing businesses. It's not about saying we need more yoga studios and massage places, right? This is about saying business is fundamentally about healing. It's about meeting each other's needs. It's about taking care of each other through what we do in our business. So if you do it right, business can be a place of healing for the people who work there. They can leave at the end of the day in a better state than when they came in because they found meaning, they found purpose, they found community, they found joy in that place of work. It can be a source of healing for all those whose lives we touch, customers, communities, for the environment. And I believe it can be a force for healing in society at a time of division in the world. I think businesses have the potential to actually bring us together. But we cannot solve this problem until we confront it. As James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. And we need to face up to the reality that we are actually causing all of this suffering in the world of business. So in our book that's coming out on this theme, The Healing Organization, we have about 25 stories of incredible companies that are doing extraordinary things to actually alleviate suffering, bring joy, and enable growth in people. And one of those stories, we label it the parable of the pothole. It comes from a company called Appletree Answers, which is the second largest call center company in the US. And the CEO told us this story. He said, imagine that if our CFO was driving into work one morning and her Mercedes hits this pothole, and a tire blows up and a rim gets damaged. She calls AAA, the car gets towed, she gets a ride, the car gets washed and polished and repaired and delivered back to the office. She shows up an hour late and everybody commiserates with her. Oh my God, that must have been so scary. Are you okay? Can I get you some coffee? It was a non-event in her life. He said, imagine one of our hourly workers. Well, 85% of our people are hourly answering the actual phones and doing the work. If she's coming in her $800 Toyota Tercel and her car hits that same pothole and she also blows out the tire and damages the rim, now she doesn't have AAA. She has to figure out how to get that car towed somewhere that can be fixed. She has no idea how she's going to pay for that eventually. Calls a friend because she can't afford the cab or Uber. Shows up at work 3 hours late and is called into the supervisor and reprimanded and given a black mark and told 2 more of these and you're fired. And then told, now go and be nice to our customers. You know, her life is falling apart. She's got $160 in the bank. She has no idea how she's going to get to work and take her kids to school tomorrow, and nobody cares. So John Ratliff, the CEO of this company, started to discover that there's a caste system within most companies. They're the professional, educated college, you know, sort of that income disparity we talked about, Bob talked about, right? High engagement, low turnover, great. We give them all kinds of leadership opportunities and personal development. And then we have the 85% who are actually doing the work. And employee turnover is 118%. And engagement was like 12%. So he said, why? We have two different systems within the same, two different cultures that exist, right? And somebody told him, wow, that's great. The industry average is 150. How are you getting to 118? He said, no, that's not acceptable. So he started to look at the lives of those workers and what they were facing on a day-to-day basis, and he discovered there were all kinds of challenges. So they set up a fund. It's called Dream On. Right? It's kind of like Make-A-Wish, to say, if you have a challenge in your life and you need help, we want to help. Right? And they put it out there, and nobody responded for 10 days. You know, people are stoic and people are heroic. They're walking around with burdens that many of us can't even imagine, and they're still doing their job and they're showing up. And finally, 10 days later, they got a note from a mother, one of their full-time employees, and she said, I'm so sorry, but I need help. So my ex-husband stopped paying alimony 2 weeks ago, and we got evicted from our apartment a week ago, and I've been living in the car with my 2 kids for a week now, and I just can't do this to them anymore. I'm so sorry, I need help. You know, and the CEO saw this, and he said, all I felt was a deep sense of shame. He said, I started this company. Here's a mother who works full-time in this company, and she's homeless, and she can't even tell us for a week. What kind of a place is this? How is that okay? And of course, they got her into a hotel that night. They got her into an apartment, helped her furnish it, you know, get over all those hurdles. And they started to change this culture. And their employee turnover has gone from 118% down to 13% now. They've done lots of other things to actually focus and take care of those people. There are many examples. I'll just share a couple more of the stories here. One of them, actually, the CEO is in the room. There's a local consulting company here called JBN. And when the 3 founders of this were rising through the ranks in consulting, I think at Accenture, and they started to have families of their own, they realized there's a cultural norm in consulting that says you have to be gone Monday to Friday every week at a client site, and that they would hardly ever see their kids. And they said, that is too high a price to pay. I'm never going to get those years back with those kids. And they'll never get me back for those years, right? So they started a consulting company here, JBN, and they said children of employees are stakeholders in our business. Their well-being matters just as much as the well-being of our employees and our clients, right? And they've made it so that all clients are local. You don't have to travel for work. It's a huge change in the lives of everybody involved, right? And yet nobody ever thought of it because that's the way we do things, right? So we have to challenge industry norms and don't accept. You know, there are many things that are incredibly wonderful about this country, but there are also things that are sort of the shadow side, right? And one of those is our criminal justice system, and how many people have been caught up in that. 73 million Americans have some kind of criminal record, often for very minor, trivial things. The same number that have a college degree. And for them, many doors are slammed shut. They don't have any opportunity. Even after they've paid their fine and their time, done their time, they still don't get the opportunities to actually lift themselves up. So a company called Greyston Bakery got started in Yonkers by a Buddhist monk named Bernie Glassman. He said, you know, we're going to actually hire people. We don't hire people to bake brownies. We're going to bake brownies to hire people. We're going to create employment for people, and we're going to invent this thing called open hiring. If you need a job, you put your name on this list, and we just go down the list. And there's no interviews, and there's no background checks, right? We're going to get you, because many people in this country don't even get a first chance. Forget about a second chance. We want to give people a first chance. And the testimony from people whose lives have been transformed, this is Dion Drew. He said, if it were not for Greyston, I would be dead or back in jail. Been in jail 3 times. Every time I come out, nobody wants to give me a job. I end up back on the street doing what I have to do to survive. Right? Now he has a daughter, and he's earning $65,000 a year as a training supervisor. This is the power of business to lift people up. Now, whether we create a healing organization or a hurting organization depends on the consciousness of the leader. The macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm. We have to work on ourselves, and if there's not something that is not healed within us as a leader, that suffering is going to show up and magnified and amplified 1,000 times on the people whom we are seeking to lead. So we have to work on healing ourselves, and all of us are carrying around wounds and traumas, and we have to deal with them. We have to confront them. So we need to convert our workplaces from places that feel like a prison. You have no freedom, right? You can't wait for the end of the day. So thank God it's Friday, now I can live. You know, get drunk, basically, is what people mean, right? Our workplace literally has become that. It doesn't have to be that way. Our workplace can feel like a playground. There's creativity, there's joy, there's camaraderie, there's fun, and there's productivity, and there's profits. All of these businesses do far better than their competitors in business terms. It is not a trade-off between taking care of people and actually running a successful business. The two are highly, highly correlated. People are not a resource. Human beings are the source. We need to treat them like a source, not a resource. A resource is like a lump of coal. I use it, it burns up, it's gone. And people burn out if you treat them like a resource. But treat them like a source. People are capable of infinite amounts of creativity and caring. There's no more powerful source of energy on this planet than a human being who's fully aligned with their purpose and turned on and inspired. How do we create that in the places that we work? So the book comes out in September, as I said, with all of those stories. Now, I'd like you, for a moment, if you could, to close your eyes. And I want you to get in tune with your own body and think about the feelings that elicit within you from these words. What would it be like if we could heal ourselves, if we could heal our families and our communities? What would that feel like? What would it feel like if we heal our companies and our countries? How would it be if we could heal our planet and all the life that is on it? And how would it feel if we could heal the past in order to heal the present and the future? You know, there are many things that happened in the past. We in this country haven't actually healed our past. We are still therefore living with the consequences of that history. We haven't acknowledged it, we haven't dealt with it. Right? As in South Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that process is very important. So we need to heal the past in order to heal the present so we can heal in the future. Imagine that future when healing becomes the purpose of business. Alleviate suffering and bring more joy. And now please open your eyes, and I'm going to share some words with you which we end our book with, which is a healing oath. And if you feel so moved, I invite you to stand up and put your right hand on your heart, if you are so moved. And if not, please support the others who are at your table, who are standing up. And I'm going to say a phrase in Latin and define it, and then I'd like you to speak with me. The phrase is in yellow here. Primum non nocere, first do no harm. And now repeat after me. I will operate my business in a way that causes no harm to others or to Mother Earth. Malus eradicare, root out evil. I will never enable or collude with abuse or exploitation. I will stand up for fairness, truth, beauty, integrity, and basic goodness. Amor vincit omnia, love conquers all. I will operate from love and always measure success by the fulfillment, abundance, and joy I generate for all those whose lives I touch. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you.